Wet and Wild, and then I went dot, 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 dot. And I hear the weather was bad too.
Exclusion, but he's not excluded as a contributor. Is that right?
I am saying that there's strong support for exclusion, yes.
Understood. With regard to that taillight sample, you were asked to compare known samples to that taillight sample, the known samples being
Show-offs.
State Trooper Yuri Buchanek and former Trooper Michael Proctor, those two known samples, correct?
Correct.
Were you asked to compare a known sample from a person by the name of Brian Higgins?
No.
Were you asked to compare a known sample from a person by the name of Brian Albert?
No.
Were you asked to compare a known sample from a person named Kevin Albert?
No.
Were you asked to compare a known sample from a person by the name of former Chief Kenneth Berkowitz?
No.
No, thanks. Go ahead.
Thank you. There's Mr. Lally, any follow-up?
No.
All right, you are all set.
You are all set. So you missed my intro song, or did you hear it?
Okay.
Did you hear my song I made over the weekend? Yeah. The only thing that got wet was my feet when I was soaking them after I'd been outside raking and got them dirty. Yeah, I remember those days, Teresa. I do. Oh, God, I do. I wouldn't be able to, I'm struggling to walk nowadays, but for different reasons. Oh, this is, I can fast forward. All right, we have a new witness, Karl Miyasako. Cool. I thought it was appropriate.
solemnly swear that the testimony you shall give to the court and the jury in the matter now pending.
It's almost like an obsession, isn't it?
I do.
Go ahead, Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Your Honor. Morning, sir.
Good morning.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury, spelling your last name for the court?
Karl Miyasako, Miyasako.
And what do you do for work, sir?
I'm a senior DNA analyst at a forensic laboratory called Bode Technology,
And where is Bode Technologies located?
Lorton, Virginia.
And where did you go to school?
Virginia Commonwealth University.
And what degrees did you receive there?
I have a bachelor's of science in forensic science.
Now, following your education, where did you go to work?
Bode Technology.
And how long have you worked there?
I've been employed at that laboratory for over 11 years.
And when you joined Bode Technologies, what was your position and title that you were initially hired for?
Initially, I started off as a DNA technician.
And when did you become an analyst?
After a few years at the laboratory, I became a DNA analyst.
What is the difference at Bode Lab between a technician and an analyst?
Technician mainly does laboratory work, and an analyst is allowed to analyze data and write reports.
Now, could you please describe for the jury the training that you underwent initially as a technician?
So I observe people perform all the tasks that I was training in, and then I'm supervised performing tasks by a qualified individual, and then I do competency tests where I'm performing things independently.
Now, is there a continuing educational component of Bode?
Yes.
And could you please describe for the jury what that entails?
So continuing education just allows analysts or technicians to keep up to date with current topics within the community and future advancements in technologies.
Now, could you please describe for the jury what type of lab Bode is?
Bode is a private accredited forensic laboratory.
And where do your cases come from?
Our cases come from different agencies throughout the country, so law enforcement agencies, medical examiners, other laboratories as well.
And is that purely on a statewide basis, national basis, or something else?
National basis.
And what is the difference at Bode Lab or Bode Technologies between a DNA Analyst 1 and a DNA Analyst 2?
The type of caseload and different cases being assigned to these individuals.
Oh, something else that's funny too.
Now, what is your current role at Bode Labs?
My current role is a senior DNA analyst.
And what is a senior DNA analyst, and what do you do in that?
I have to play it for you. You ready?
Wrong at school is how great Marcia is at this, or how wonderful Marcia did that.
Arca, arca, arca. wasn't done at all. I couldn't help myself. I'll play it again.
Wrong at school is how great Marcia is at this, or how wonderful Marcia did that.
Arca, arca, arca. Oh, the Lord, I cracked myself up. That was my ideal weekend. Make songs. Oh, dear.
So senior analyst provides expertise or leadership in at least one discipline within the company. Senior analysts report challenging cases, are independent of other analysts, and also train other analysts as well.
So I'm going to ask you to keep your voice up, please.
And sir, that microphone in front of you is adjustable. You can put it as close to yourself as you feel comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now,
Good
specifically
one.
with reference to DNA
I
analysis,
agree
can you
with
explain to the jury first in general terms how that analysis is performed at your lab?
Yeah, so it starts with receipt of evidence, and then it goes through the laboratory through different procedures up until we develop that DNA profile, and it gets interpreted and analyzed.
Now, is the Bode lab accredited?
Yes,
And by whom is it accredited?
we are accredited by a NSI National Accreditation Board.
Now, are there steps taken within your lab at Bode to prevent against contamination?
Yeah, we have.
You mean these ones? I believe they are some sort of puncture wound, but they could not have been done by first responders, because when John was found, he was in what's called asystole, which means there was no electrical activity in his heart. And I believe at 80 degrees Fahrenheit, he'd been, because I've done a little bit of research today, given his weight, his clothing, his level of intoxication, and the position that he was in on the snow and the temperatures, his time of death was between 5 and 6 hours prior to being found, which works out perfect, I might add. 12:30 to 6:30. Now, so if he's been in the snow that long, it would have taken at least 5 hours to get his body core temperature down to that. And he would not have lasted like more than, if he was still alive, he would not have lasted more than 30 minutes in that. So when your body is shutting down, because he lost a lot of blood, remember, your body has these amazing mechanisms where it shuts down all of your peripheral circulation and basically makes it circulate to just the heart, lungs, and brain. So that's the first thing that happens. And that keeps the vital organs going. So once the heart stops, then the body obviously starts to cool, and at different rates given different conditions. So if he's been in the snow and an asystole for, even if it's a couple of hours, those veins would have collapsed and there would have been no blood circulation. So A, they wouldn't have bruised like that because there was no blood circulation, and B, no first responder would even attempt a peripheral line. That's the furthest point from his periphery of his upper body. Like if they were going to try a peripheral line, they would go for the cubital fossa, which is in the elbow, inside of the elbow. But they had the intraosseous already in his tibia. So I can't explain this. I cannot. The only thing that explains that is that it was done before he died. And then, as I was explaining at the start, like when I was just talking to myself earlier, I said, it was like, because I only just sort of nutted this out this afternoon. I thought, well, hang on a second. That means that if he's had someone try and put IV access in and it's bruised, that means that someone has tried to resuscitate him. And then I thought, oh, that would mean there would have to be, you know, someone who is medically trained. There was a fucking nurse there. What was her name? Sarah Livingston? Is it her? I cannot explain it. That IV, no, because defensive wounds, if you think about it, when you punch someone, you punch them with this part of your hand, not the top half. And 2 marks. There's 2 puncture marks there. Now, he could have been bitten by a snake. But it happened when he was alive because it's bruised. So, unless he went like that, and whoever had 2 points on a ring and it hit that, I don't know. But they're definite puncture wounds. And you can actually see he's got more, another mark on his, just on his outside of his wrist there. And the one on his leg, on his right outer aspect of his right knee, it actually looks like a cigarette burn. Like, it's bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre. I cannot explain them. It is just, the more I look at it and the more I concentrate on it and the more I study it, I don't know. But the other thing that I put up too was the medical examiner, Irene Scorti Bello. I don't know if you noticed, I put the short up this afternoon, but the actual notes, you know, when she does the autopsy, she writes the handwritten notes with the body chart, you know, and it had outlined everything, every injury and what have you that was on him. It was redacted in the second trial. There was nothing on it. Nothing. Except his name. The fuck? Why? He can put his hands up to block something, but there would have had to have been something that had 2 pointy bits on it, at least. Oh my God, look at my hand. I'm holding it up straight and it's already retarded. Fucking arthritis. The claw. Ah! So something has caused those 2 puncture wounds. I don't know. It blows me away. But apparently frostbite takes 2 to 3 hours to set in. And he didn't have any. So there could have been a 2 or 3 hour time period where he was on the floor of the basement. I have no idea. The only thing I know is that head injury was not caused by that car. That's it. The rest, no effing idea. It's funny, as a last resort today, I was going through everything. I thought, I'm going to enter this into ChatGPT. Fuck it. I'll just put it in. And I put in his height, his weight, the conditions, his intoxication, because he was heavily intoxicated. Like, that's another factor. His blood alcohol was 0.21, and it was on the way down. His vitreous concentration was 2.8. Now, sorry, 0.28. At 0.28, you are nearly unconscious. It is like alcohol poisoning. Even at 0.21, apparently that size man with that weight, he would have definitely been impaired. He would have had trouble walking, talking. He would have slurred speech, the whole lot. And that 2.21 was on its way down. So it had been higher than that. I've no idea. No idea. No idea. Who knows? He could have bloody ran into the house and fallen down the freaking stairs for all we know. No, he would have had marks elsewhere. I don't know. I don't know. The more I think about it, the more confused I get to try and explain all this shit. Like I put all the stuff into ChatGPT. Sorry, I got distracted, and it spat it out. It said to me, "Would you like me to put it together in a forensic manner for a court? You know, blah 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 blah. Yep, that'd be good." Okay, there. The ChatGPT, right? Hypothetical. Put in all the coordinates, all the everything. Cause of death: massive blunt force trauma. Specific region of the skull, leading to severe intracranial hemorrhaging, complicated by acute alcohol intoxication and terminal hypothermia. Manner of death: undetermined. Pending further investigation. However, the injury pattern, environmental evidence, and lack of consistency with vehicular impact significantly weaken the current prosecution hypothesis. There you go. It even drew me a picture of how high the Lexus was and how it was an impossible biomechanical thing to happen. And that's just ChatGPT. There you go. All right. I've put two of the links in the in Discord in the main chat. Oh, actually, sorry, not under the live stream for today to see if it opens it from my Google Drive. Do you want to have a read? Yeah. Can you just get to the point? Fuck. No, he wouldn't fucking be here if he didn't. L. Right. Mm. Mhm. Mhm. Oh, sorry.
Cannot exclude the individual, the
Keep
reference donor,
returning.
as being the source of the evidence
I was
sample.
fast forwarding it.
What is
anyway.
autosomal DNA?
Autosomal DNA is
Sorry.
like nuclear DNA. It's something that you maybe more, when thought of forensics, traditional STR short-handed repeats.
Mhm.
And what is mitochondrial DNA?
You just went through this previous
My,
guy.
PCR stands for polymerase chain reaction.
Mhm.
And can you please describe the PCR method to the jury?
Mhm.
Yes, so a common reference standard,
Yes or no?
and any differences from that common standard gets reported.
I swear to God, if he comes up at the end and says it was inconclusive, we couldn't tell you.
As that individual's mitochondrial profile.
Now, how is the testing different between autosomal versus mitochondrial DNA?
We just went through this, Polly.
A lot of this is we use what's called a
Seriously.
yield gel, and
The
we
previous
get a
witness.
visual presentation of how much DNA is present within that sample.
When you say a visual presentation, visual, like what type of instruments are you using to get that visualization?
So we use a gel and UV light and a camera to capture essentially what we refer to as a band.
Mhm.
And what does that band look like?
It's
Well,
generally if there is
The drummer.
presence of mitochondrial DNA within that sample, it emits a bright band on this gel. If there isn't anything, then we don't observe that band.
And what kind of instrumentation does your lab utilize in mitochondrial DNA testing?
We use a thermocycler or 3130 genetic analyzer as well.
Could you spell that, please?
The thermocycler, or THERMAL CYCLER.
And then what were the digits after?
And then the genetic analyzer is a 3130 3130.
Right. You know.
And if you could you please describe what those instruments do or what they're used for specifically within the process of the mitochondrial DNA testing?
So one HV.
Bode lab also performed mitochondrial DNA testing on the known standard from John O'Keefe.
Yes.
And is that mitochondrial DNA testing the same for the known standard of John O'Keefe as it is, as you've been describing with reference to the evidence sample?
Yes.
And what is then done? And
So
what does the D loop have to do with certain variabilities within the human population?
so this region is a non-coding region within the mitochondria, so it can allow for mutations because it wouldn't affect the mitochondria functions. Because of this highly variable difference within this region, it's useful for determining different maternal populations.
Now, did the Bode lab also perform mitochondrial DNA testing on the known standard from John O'Keefe?
Yes.
And is that mitochondrial DNA testing the same for the known standard of John O'Keefe as it is, as you've been describing with reference to the evidence sample?
Yes.
And what is then done generally in the comparison of those two profiles?
So once we develop the profiles from these two separate sources, a comparison is done to each other, and we look at it to see if the profiles consistent, essentially matching with each other, and seeing if an exclusion or inclusion can be made.
And did you then perform your own comparative analysis of those two mitochondrial DNA profiles from the hair extracts from the rear panel of the defendant's vehicle and that of the known standard of Mr. O'Keefe?
I did.
And what is your opinion or conclusions that you arrived at from that comparative analysis?
Sustained.
If
Hold on. Ask it differently, Mr. Hall.
What conclusions did you come to from that comparative analysis between those two standards?
that John O'Keefe could not be excluded as being a source of the hair sample.
Can you expound a little as far as your conclusion is concerned? What does that mean?
After all that,
Yeah, if I may refer to my report.
Yes.
I would have put it there if I didn't think it was from him, you dickhead.
So whenever we have a conclusion of a probable inclusion, like in this case where I could not exclude John O'Keefe as being a source of the hair sample, we do a statistical analysis to give weight to that.
How many zeros? What? Uh-huh. Al?
Probable inclusion. So in this case, using a database and with 95% confidence, at least 99.895% of the population can be excluded as being a source of that hair sample.
And let me ask you just in general terms, that database you're using is referred to as MPOP, EMPOP, is that correct?
Correct.
And what is an MPOP?
So it's a searchable database where we search minor profiles in the database and essentially to see how common or rare that profile will be seen in the population.
My database.
With MPOP in our laboratory, we search 3 main population groups within the United States: African American, Caucasian, Hispanic. And so the general goal is just to see how rare would that profile be within these populations.
And so what conclusions did you come to with reference to the consistency of the hair sample versus Mr. O'Keefe's sample in that MPOP database?
With 95% confidence, at least 99.895% of the population can be excluded as being a source of the hair sample.
Now, you made reference in your testimony a moment before about a confidence interval. What is that?
Yeah, so whenever we obtain statistical data, we use a confidence interval or upper limit frequency. This is just like a range where the true value of said profile is, but we generally want to report like a conservative end to avoid any false inclusions. So it's at least 99.895% that the majority of the population can be excluded, but it could be higher, but at the lower end, it would be at least 99.895%.
And what confidence interval in your conclusion does this consistency between the hair sample profile from the rear quarter panel of the defendant's vehicle have to Mr. O'Keefe's mitochondrial DNA profile?
So it's the 99 with 95% confidence, 99.985% of the population. So the majority of the population could be excluded. However, with John O'Keefe and his maternal relatives, they could not.
Thank you, sir. I have nothing further on.
All that for that.
Jackson?
He's going to ask the same questions. Did you test it against
Good
him?
morning, Mr. Miyasako.
Test it against
morning.
Albert. Test it against.
A couple of quick questions. Mitochondrial DNA, as you've explained, is different than autosomal DNA in pretty significant ways, correct?
Correct.
What we think of as traditional nuclear DNA, that's autosomal DNA. That's the DNA that we derive from mom and dad, comes down to the child, correct?
Correct.
Mitochondrial DNA, by
mom.
contrast, is simply the maternal line, excluding the dads, correct?
Correct.
So my mitochondrial DNA has nothing to do with my father, everything to do with my mother. Is that right?
Yeah, mitochondrial DNA gets inherited from the mom to child.
Okay, so a male like John O'Keefe, for instance, the known sample that you were working with, shares the exact same mitochondrial DNA as, for instance, his mother, correct?
Correct. His mom and any other maternally related individuals.
You just took the words right out of my mouth. That's my next question. Stop being smarter than me. It's gonna be a tough task. It's also the exact same mitochondrial DNA for his grandmother, right?
Correct.
And let's move the lineage off the tree trunk and move it onto branches. For instance, if his mother had 2 children, John and a sister, his sister would also have the exact same mitochondrial DNA, correct?
Correct.
And now staying on that branch of the tree, going out to a leaf, if his sister had children, those children would have the exact same mitochondrial DNA.
Correct.
So another way of saying that, his maternal
nephew.
his maternal nephew
Could
would
his
have the
nephew.
identical mitochondrial DNA as John O'Keefe, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
They come from them.
When you indicated that John O'Keefe is included in the population of those who match that profile, that does not mean that you're determining that the hair that you analyzed came from John O'Keefe, does it?
No, with mitochondrial DNA analysis, it's not unique to individual. Compared to traditional STRs or short chain repeat, that could be unique to individual. But with mitochondrial DNA, it's not unique to individual, but more so a maternal lineage.
All right. So, Mr. Miyasako, very importantly, you're not sitting here saying that that hair belonged to John O'Keefe.
I'm saying that the hair sample in John O'Keefe cannot be excluded, as well as his maternal relatives.
So we're speaking in negatives. I want to speak in a positive. You are not saying that John O'Keefe, that hair belonged to John O'Keefe, are you? Yes or no?
Sustained.
Are you suggesting to these jurors that the hair that you analyzed belonged to John O'Keefe?
Sustained.
Are you telling the jurors, to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, that the hair that you analyzed belonged to John O'Keefe?
I'll see you type out.
Sure.
I don't see what's the problem with that. Mm-hmm. What do I write? Provide a detailed analysis a testimony and make note of the events finding.
May I inquire?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Miyasako, going back to my question, you're not saying that the hair belonged to John O'Keefe, correct? That's not what you're saying.
What I'm saying is based on the genetic data obtained from the hair
doing?
sample and the genetic data obtained from the known reference sample of John O'Keefe, I could not exclude John O'Keefe as being a possible source of the hair sample. In addition, all maternally related individuals could not be excluded as being a source of the hair sample.
Another way of saying that, Mr. Miyasako, is to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, you cannot say that hair belonged to John O'Keefe specifically, can you? Yes or no?
No, with mitochondrial DNA, you can't
Okay.
Say that it is per se an individual person, so it's more so the maternal line.
Because the hair could
Okay,
come
wait,
from
hang on one
from
sec.
his maternal nephew
Injuries.
or anybody in his maternal line, correct?
Correct. If
Okay.
they also had access to that stuff, then yeah.
For instance, access to that stuff, meaning if his maternal nephew lived in the home with him, where the SUV was stored, just as reasonable if the hair came from him, correct?
Sustained.
Your analysis does not tell us when the hair got to where it was found, correct?
Correct.
Your analysis does not tell us how the hair got to where it was found, correct?
Correct.
And mitochondrial DNA does not reveal anything about the hair's color or age or texture, nothing like that.
Not on the analysis that we performed.
Okay. So for all you know, that hair could have been placed where it was found by somebody else.
Sustained.
You're not telling this jury how the hair got where it was ultimately found and recovered, correct?
Correct. Our testing is just based on the evidence provided to us and the comparisons done between the two different evidence.
And in short, you can't say that the hair specifically came from John O'Keefe either, can you?
With mitochondrial DNA, I can't say that it is specific to an individual.
Okay, including John O'Keefe.
In this instance, John O'Keefe's profile was consistent with the hair sample.
That's not what my question was.
Yeah.
We can go round and round.
Yeah,
I realize that you're saying it's consistent, but it's also consistent with his nephew.
Yep.
Right?
sure is.
Correct. I can't exclude maternal relatives because mitochondrial DNA is not specific to individual, but just the maternal line.
Right. So you're not saying it was John
I'm
O'Keefe.
just putting it in. You know what I did today? I decided I was going to clean my toilet. I dropped the bloody lid into the loo. Had to go fishing around. Lucky I flushed. All right, I have a question for you because I am perplexed. I'll put this back up on the screen. Now, when I saw these, initially, these are the John's right hand. I instantly thought IB access, yeah? Those responders? There's only one problem with that. He was in asystole when they found him, and no one in their right mind would try and put in a peripheral line if they're in asystole with a body temp of 80. Then the furthest point on their upper periphery when they've got an they've got the intraosseous device and his tibia. That ain't. If it is IV access, it had to have been done pre-mortem because it's bruised. Is pre-mortem? Perimortem. Before. That's the only thing I can conclude. The definite puncture wounds. And Irene Scordi-Bello presented, the medical exam when she did the autopsy. She's got her chart, the body chart that she documents all of the findings and all of the wounds and injuries and stuff. Was completely redacted. Had nothing on it. It was blank except for his name in the second trial. The fuck? I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand how he could have obtained those marks by anything else other than trying to put an IV in. But there's no way a first responder would do that. Not in the snow. And I can't even remember what their testimonies. That'll be my next question to AI. I'll ask it. I'll ask the database. I'm doing Irene at the moment. Because I think there was someone testified in the first trial that Michael Proctor attended that autopsy because he was signed into the log, apparently. So I'm trying to find it. So there you go. That's my dilemma for the day. Oh.
From John O'Keefe is consistent with that hair sample, but
Mr. Jackson, let's move on.
The reason you can't say that it's John O'Keefe's hair is because it also matches everybody in his maternal line. That's what we're getting down to.
But even
correct?
so, he would not have had any circulation, so it wouldn't have bruised, even if they did try. I don't get it.
with mitochondrial DNA, again, it's not unique to an individual, but their maternal lineage.
And if his maternal nephew lived in the same residence and had access to the same SUV, couldn't exclude him either, right?
Sustained.
So in short, Mr. Miyasako, you cannot tell this jury when the hair got to where it was, correct?
Nope.
Sustained.
You can't tell this jury how the hair got to where it was found, correct?
Sustained.
And you certainly cannot tell the jury that
You
the hair
can't
belonged to
unring
John,
that belt.
right?
Sustained.
I think we've got it. Thanks, Your Honor.
Mr. Lally, anything?
That's funny. Did you hear my new
Mr.
song?
Miyasako, including the MPOP, the statistics, and the confidence interval, what is your conclusion in reference to the comparative analysis from mitochondrial profiles from the hair sample from the rear quarter panel of the defendant's vehicle and the known standard of John O'Keefe?
Based on the genetic data obtained for the two different samples, I could not exclude John O'Keefe's known standards profile being consistent with the hair samples profile, and with 95% confidence, at least 99.895% of the population can be excluded as a source of the evidence.
Thank you, sir. Nothing further.
One question, Your Honor. Do you also maintain that 95% confidence in the nephew?
Yeah, so again, with maternal
You can
populations,
finish your answer. Go.
with maternal populations, I can't exclude anybody maternally related to John O'Keefe as well.
Thank you very much, sir. You are all set.
You are all set. Where is it? Come on.
Where's the Commonwealth's next witness?
Commonwealth's next witness is Shannon Burgess.
Shannon Burgess. Shannon Burgess. Do I call that name?